Hello and welcome to Future Commerce, the podcast about the next generation of commerce. I'm Brian.
I'm Philip. Today we have an amazing, dissection of cultural trends reporting and aggregation of trends reports and how companies like Future Commerce use resources in the world to be able to, have an ear out for what the sentiment is about the future of all things, not just commerce. Today, to speak a little bit about that is somebody who made a little bit of a splash here at the beginning of the year with a project about aggregating these trends reports into a resource for a community to consume. Cian Lee, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And this is not your full-time job, tracking trends reports. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do by day.
Okay, I'm Sun. I'm from Singapore, and I'm currently a media planner with Publicis. Outside of work, I'm an aspiring strategist, and I think it's just about keeping up with the latest trends and really connecting with other people, other strategists from around the world, and seeing how I can find opportunity to help one another and to really give back to the community.
That's so cool. And that means you've seen a lot of trends reports for this coming year. Tell me, what are some of the most common threads that you've seen so far, and what inspired you to even make this report?
Okay, I think we have quite a lot of reports. Like we're currently at about 205 trend reports and report links as well. And basically we're covering markets outside the US and Europe. Like your Asia Pacific, China, Latin America, and even with reports in other languages like Spanish and Portuguese. And I think in terms of the various topics, it's really as diverse as we want it to be. Having whether it's the latest workplace trends, in the future of work, employee experience, talent acquisition, to even Web3, metaverse, crypto, blockchain, and that space, as well as even including your reports on ESG, climate, sustainability, and it's really basically a huge variety. And I think why I started this actually, this is actually the third year in the running, is that when COVID first hit, I realized that I was sitting on a lot of reports from all around the world. Like every company, every agency, every consultancy was trying to put out their report to give a POV on how to handle the pandemic, handle the crisis. But I think there wasn't a one-stop shop or like a folder to put all the reports together. And I realized that if I put it all together, actually it would really help time poor or time sensitive folks like myself to really get the insights fast and provide your recommendations for your clients or even your own companies and businesses. So since then, I realized that, okay, there's all these companies that actually does trend forecasting. They provide commentaries, they provide POVs. And I realized that, instead of just COVID trends, why don't I look at annual trends? And then that's how 2021 trending started. And then 2022 trending continued, and then some people reach out, share that reports, and then this year we expanded the collective. Not just me and my very good friend Gonzalo, but we invited other people from around the world, like Amy, Yolanda, Biber, Matthias, to really work together to just put together this repository, to make it as diverse as possible and to really just split the work and divide and conquer.
It's funny, Brian, this is it's like the Constitution DAO, it's like a community self-organization of trends reporting is like, let's pull together a bunch of resources of people who depend on this kind of content in their jobs to have a much broader and community curation and aggregation of the kinds of things that you would typically have gone to an analyst to buy in a prior life, right?
It's all getting published. Trends are a trend. It's getting meta.
It sure is. Let's talk a little bit about the audience that you see interacting with the content. So, CN, when you're looking at when you're fielding outreach from people who want to be included, what are the kinds of companies or the regions that have come forward and say, we'd love to have representation in your repository?
I think interestingly, it's mainly people in Europe. Like I think it tends to be a much stronger sharing culture over there. So actually, like excluding myself, and Gonzalo. I think the rest are all mainly from Europe, and just basically sharing the resources. And I think as long as you share a report with us, right, we will definitely add it into the drive, and then we'll credit you as well. And I think that's where the relationship starts, and then that's where we can start to partner up, for future runs of this whole repository, to continue to work together closely. But throughout the course of this endeavor, I met this guy called Omar. Um, Omar from over in Latin America, right? And he has actually been the most helpful, sharing all the reports in Latin America or in Spanish. Omar Romero from Colombia, sharing all the resources and ensuring that, there's also representation and also support for people working in that area as well, in terms of being part of, moving forward in the years ahead.
Yeah. When you're, so you have folks that have sort of raised their hands that came to you and said, we're willing to help because we were kind of doing this too. So we're all bringing community projects together. That's an ethos that the open source community has always self-organized around. Do you see interesting parallels between the roles of the people that are coming to you looking to help you curate? Because I have to believe there's also opportunists who probably want to include a bunch of SEO garbage or something that, they see this as an opportunity for attention arbitrage. How do you go about qualifying what's good and what's bad?
In terms of what's good and what's bad, this is quite tricky in the sense that I think we do check through the reports, to ensure that there's some quality to it, because I think we don't really place more weightage or more importance to one report over another, but we just don't want to waste people's time, especially when you have so many reports to analyze from. So I think most of the time people usually just share one or two reports, and I think most of it is usually from the companies or what they publish. And I think by all means we do check through to ensure that, for example, the sources are properly cited. It's not someone else's work that's just passing off as their own, or that there's enough content in there to really help someone to move forward, right? Help provide a bit of analysis and a bit of rigor to it. So in terms of the reports that we have like reports from Ford, McKinsey, Accenture, Deloitte. These are all your usual suspects, which publishes every year. And I think we try as much as possible to really make sure that there's a diverse collection, where there's a report for everyone, and to, drive this idea of inclusion, that the world is bigger than just, US or Europe, right? And it's not limited to the advertising and marketing industry. So I think when we were earlier discussing as well, like the reports from like Bank of America and stuff, and all this came about because I chanced upon a LinkedIn post by this lady from Hong Kong called Audrey Wang, and then she compiled the list of all the market outlooks for 2023. And then we realized, okay, that's what's missing. Let's add it in. And then Yolanda, one of our co-conspirators, she basically had shortlisted and handpicked a couple of reports which she felt was of a better quality.
That's really interesting. One of the things that I always am curious about with these trends reports are what has anyone followed up afterwards to say, oh, we saw this trend and then this was the outcome of the trend. Have you seen any trends sort of start to take responsibility for or follow up on the results of what the trend meant for the year?
Yeah, you do have some who consistently met the trends throughout. So that's your Pinterest, for example. Pinterest predicts. Another one is Insights Consulting. And of course, the ever legendary Matt Klein, who has been doing it since 2017, where, in each of their own fields, they basically trace how the trend has progressed throughout the year. Whether it has died out or whether he has branched out into other sub-trends as well, and what this really means for all of us. So I think that's something really interesting to see, that, it's not just purely hocus pocus, like I feel that this year is going to be all about authenticity, for example, and then, that's what the year will be. But there are people who do, really put in the effort and the rigor to really ensure that, these trends are real trends and not something that is trendy.
Is that something? Do you want
Go
to
ahead.
aspire to verify, to validate as a part of this? Like as you like grow and what you're looking to with the scope of your project, are you looking to help provide some of that sanity check as we progress through the year?
I think there's some books in place to see whether maybe we can do a half a year or mid year milestone check, to see how the trends are progressing and stuff. But for me
Hmm.
personally, I'm not really into analyzing every trend that's out there. For
Okay,
me,
got it.
why I said all this is just to have all the reports at the back of my hand, so that when I have a brief, I have some data ready.
Mm. There, there's a calendarized schedule at which most of these come out, which means that folks are probably building the content October, November. They're putting somebody wants to be the Iowa caucus of the trends report, to use the US centric term. It's like whoever is first sets the tone. And I have to believe that there are some that are consistently first. And then there's certain industries that are probably outside of the typical December, January trends report forecasting. Um, to your knowledge, have you seen a cyclical nature to the way that these come out that sit outside of just the December, January trends report schedule? And how does that sort of vary by industry?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of publishers that actually launch it pretty early, or rather pretty late in the year. So like say October, November, you will see the report starting to surface, and then I think December there's quite a fair bit, and then people go off for the holidays, and then January there's a sudden rush for everyone to get their POVs out there. And then February is a bit quiet, and then you see the laggards. But I think in terms of February, for example, that's when you have some of the bigger names like Meta, or like
Mm-hmm.
TBWA, that's when they tend to produce their reports. And I'm not sure why that's then, but we tend to see sort of like a staggered approach in terms of how various companies releases their reports. But in terms of those that produce it every year on a consistent basis, they tend to be quite early in the game. So I think October, November, that's around the time where we start to see reports. And that's also the time where we got together for 2023, to start to get this going, to see how we can split the workload, or rather, to really be very strategic in how we find the reports, and then, to go about doing it among ourselves. So I think that, something very interesting this year compared to last year is that, while trend reports are becoming more important, I think this year is actually an anomaly. And that's because it took us a lot longer to reach 100 reports as compared to previous years. I think with
Wow.
all the state of affairs that's happening, whether it's coming out of energy crisis, or even coming out or being in the peak of the Ukraine war, right down to a possible year of recession, I think a lot of companies were holding back on giving any predictions or forecasts because
Hmm.
they really couldn't picture what the future would look like. Yeah, but in any case, the diversity and volume of the reports that we got this year is quite staggering. And I think like you said, the publishing and the collection of trend reports and the reporting of the reports has become a trend in itself.
If you have a dedicated inbox to receiving all the marketing now that you've gone through all these email gates. I rest in peace to anyone who has to check the inbox. But how do you sort of manage the nature of the trends report is actually a marketing vehicle to business development teams, right? For the most part, I'm guessing that someone if you hadn't picked it up listening to the show yet, Pinterest sounds like has an insights product that you can buy from them, and that they use the trends report to help to sell. And most everybody has something to sell on the other side of this. So, what's your sense of how many the types of industries that use this as business development and therefore potentially have a commercial incentive behind it, versus industries that sort of have to use this as self-regulation, and I assume that's divided very heavily by industries that are regulated. So transportation and financial institutions probably have less of a marketing incentive, whereas a social media company probably has nothing but marketing incentive around it. Give us a little bit of your, oration around that aspect of trends reporting.
Mm. I think in many reports, many of these reports are actually a PR opportunity. So I'm not going to name and shame, but you have reports by companies that's all about their product capabilities, and then they just reframe it as a trend or as a helpful insight. And then others are just simply talking about the trends from yesteryears. So they're still going on about ambience, authenticity, escapism, or the talk of the town in Q3, Q4 about inflation, metaverse, and gaming, right? So it doesn't really tell you a lot of anything new that you didn't previously, know. And then a couple of reports are actually built around case studies of their past work, or even featuring their clients as experts. I think you will probably know some of these publishers out there. Yeah, so this is, I think, mostly a PR opportunity, and I think it really got exacerbated by the pandemic, when people realized that, giving guidance and POVs has some form of value in this new normal. And with the various crises that came along, there's an opportunity for companies to really get themselves out there and be heard. Yeah, but so for me, in terms of like all these reports, we're not going to leave them out, but in terms of when I'm doing my day-to-day work, I know certain reports that are just cut above the rest in terms of what they are forecasting for the year to come, or how they're measuring the shift in culture and society, right? And I would tend to refer to these reports more than anything else. And it tends to be those with methodologies in place. How do they track trends? What do trends mean to them? How do they go about ensuring that it's a trend and not something that is just a sort of like a false positive?
Interesting. What I'm taking away from this is that there was a lot of uncertainty, in the past few years, and as a result, people were a little bit unclear about where things were headed or where things were going. It was clear demand for information about the future, because the future actually became more real than the present in some ways. It became more relevant. And so the reason for the boom in these reports is that marketers are good at recognizing what customers are looking for. And so they put out stuff about the future, like about how things were changing, and to help give people some of that peace of mind or direction about what they should do. Having come off of, I mean, if you think about this from the long view, we had the GFC back in 2008. We've had uncertainty for 10 plus years in many ways. And so I think that what you're saying is true. Like the demand for understanding what's coming is going up. Therefore, trends reports are just flying right behind that, because that's what customers want right now. That's what people need.
Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's ask a couple sort of tactical questions. Have you seen anyone do anything interesting with the repository so far, or be put to practical use, or still too early in the 2023 cycle to really call out, folks who have maybe used this for their own purposes?
Okay. I think that there's some people who are trying to use AI to analyze all the reports, but I haven't really seen the analysis coming out yet. But I think something interesting that I saw on LinkedIn is by this guy called Peter Buckley from Meta, right? And what he did was, I think he used semantics and and listening tools to basically analyze what was most mentioned across the reports. And I think something interesting that he found out is that AI is the trend of the year with 1,305 mentions across the then 102 reports, and then this is followed by crypto and the metaverse, right? In his analysis, he's saying that AI will become what he calls copywriting king. Where Gartner, the research company, estimates that by 2025, 30% of all your outbound marketing messages will be written by generative AI. And then, boom, you have now ChatGPT, reaching 1 million users in just 5 days. And then Microsoft coming onto the race with their Bing, as well as Google's Bard chatbot, and all that. So I think it's quite interesting to see like how all this analysis is actually unfolding out in real time, and basically this guy, he just used semantics and social listening to some extent to analyze the various reports. I think on a smaller scale, you have a couple of independent people who who use the repository to create a trend report of the trend reports. I'm sure you've probably heard or seen some, but shout out to Audrey Derman, for sharing her own review of top reports that she found to be insightful and useful. When you have so many reports, sometimes people do not know where to start, and I think it's really helpful when you're able to and you have the first-hand experience of what helps you to help others as well. And then, of course, you have Matt Klein and his Meta Trends 2023 report, right, where he basically has really distilled all of the industry's reported trends into about 50 or so global cultural forecasts, basically since predicting and mastering the art of trend forecasting since 2017. Yeah, and I think that there's a couple more. I'm not sure whether they use the repository or whether they have given us a shout out, but yeah, I think definitely yes, make its rounds, because I have seen, like, even within like Publicis itself, right, we have these teams chat for global insights and stuff, and actually someone went to share the Google Drive folder, and I realized, oh, that's mine. So yeah, it's quite surprising to see how it has actually gone viral in many extents. And then some of my own friends saying, hey, do you know that someone sent your folder to me at work today? And then yeah, I'm like, okay, you're most welcome.
That's pretty cool. So I guess there's two tactical questions here then at the end. How do people find the trends repository? I found it in a Google Drive that was sent to me by someone I work with. So there you go. And then how do people contribute their reports to the next crop?
Yeah, I think you can just find us on LinkedIn or find us online. If we have a shortened link as well. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/2023 trending. Yeah, and all the reports are there, and we also have a couple of like signposts to bring you to 2022, 2021, as well as your 2020 COVID trends. So if you are a nerd, and you want to nerd it out and see how the world has evolved, by all means, everything is there for you.
Amazing. And
Awesome.
I really appreciate this work that you're doing. Best of luck. I can't wait to see how this project evolves. And we've been using it as well for contextual understanding in our reporting. So our, future commerce, our goal is really to think about the near and far future of the way, commercial endeavors are built and sold and marketed in the world. And we have found already a ton of uses for this repository, especially in 2023. And so the last month and a half have just been such a joy for us to go back to and use. And we're using a tool called Bundle IQ that's helping us sort of get the referential relevance as we're creating content. But I can't wait to continue to watch it grow. Thank you so much for your time, Cian.
Thanks,
Thank
Ian.
you. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. And thank you so much for listening to Future Commerce. You can find more episodes of this podcast and all Future Commerce properties at futurecommerce.fm.